One of my big aspirations for this channel is to travel the world and take you all along with me to discover all the different coloring and art culture in different corners of the globe. And I'll definitely be doing that early next year when I go to Japan. I'm so excited. But before then, I wanted to kick things off a little closer to home. So last weekend, I actually ended up going down to Melbourne and seeing what they have to offer for all the art loving and coloring enthusiasts. So whether you live in Melbourne, plan to visit one day, or are just curious as to what the city has to offer, shopping wise of course, hopefully you'll come away from watching this video with a solid list of stores to visit and maybe some coloring goodies to check out. And of course the second half of this video is going to be a bit of a coloring haul showing you all the goodies that I picked up during my Melbourne shopping extravaganza. Alright, without further ado, let's head to store number 1. So Jackson and I trained into the city centre from where we were staying and then just walked to each store from there. And our very first stop was the paperback bookshop. This is one of those classic tiny independent bookstores where books are kind of stacked everywhere in the most haphazard yet somehow perfectly organized way. We didn't stay too long because it was quite cramped and a little bit overwhelming, but they had such an amazing range of books here that spanned across so many different genres. Naturally, I had to grab some clips of the covers that caught my eye. There were so many beautifully designed ones here, and I found myself especially drawn to the young adult section in this store. There was just something about those covers that kept calling out to me. Unfortunately, there weren't any coloring books specifically, but they did have some really great art books that covered a range of interesting topics, as well as a selection of manga books that I think could serve as a really fun inspiration for future coloring pages. Stop number 2 on our shopping itinerary was the Hill of Content bookshop. It's actually Melbourne's oldest bookstore, originally opening back in 1922. It has changed locations since then, but the business itself has been around for over 100 years, which I just think is so incredibly cool. Unfortunately, this store was also a little bit of a bust when it came to actual coloring books, but there were so many gorgeous covers to admire and get inspiration from. Someone actually commented recently on one of my videos that they often find coloring inspiration in children's books. And let me tell you, this store was absolutely perfect for that. They had some incredibly illustrated kids books, almost to the point where they felt more like art books rather than books for kids. And the artwork in this one book in particular, oh my goodness, I was absolutely gobsmacked. I didn't end up purchasing it at the time, but I really have not been able to stop thinking of that book since. So an online purchase might be in my future. It might be coming. And then stop number 3 is where we hit the coloring book jackpot. This is Dymocks, one of the major bookstore chains here in Australia. And even though it's a big chain, the closest one to where I live is over an hour away, so I rarely get to visit one in person. But holy moly, I have never seen so many coloring books in one store before. First off, I found a bunch of cozy, simple, and bold style coloring books. They had so many Christmas ones on display, of course, and that instantly put me in a bit of a festive mood. I particularly fell in love with this book right here. There was just something about the illustrations that immediately caught my eye, and yes, I was obsessed and in love with it. Then I stumbled across so many other adorably themed books. I was, of course, especially drawn to the Japanese inspired ones, which anything Japan related instantly grabs my attention. I think if there was a fan club for Japan, I would probably be the vice president. Sometimes I feel like a bit of a creep with how obsessed I am with their food and culture, but anyway, self-confession time over. On the other side of the display, I found a capybara coloring book that, I don't know, I just found it hilarious. It did kind of give me small victories energy. Each page featured capybaras doing all sorts of hilarious little things. And then I also spotted a new Bobby Goods book, or at least I hadn't seen it before, that focused on both coloring and drawing. I would have really loved to have peeked inside inside this one, but it was sealed in plastic, sadly. I did find a few Australian-made colouring books too, which, you know, is always really nice to see. Next, I wandered into, I guess, the more kid-focused section where I found Lilu Mayo's new self-care colouring book. Even though the illustrations are a little simpler in this one, I love that she stayed true to her signature whimsical and quirky art style in this book. I just really appreciated that. There were quite a few other artsy and craftsy finds too, like Chloe Rose's recent drawing book release. She's an art YouTuber for those who don't know her. And then the real jackpot that I was talking about earlier, 3 entire shelves dedicated to adult colouring. I said hello to a few familiar books that I already own, spotted a ton that are still on my wish list, and even discovered a few I'd never seen before that just completely stole my little colourist heart. One in particular that I didn't buy on the day but immediately added to my Amazon wish list was the Magnificent Manga colouring book. Just look at these illustrations. So detailed, so gorgeous, and honestly one of the most beautiful manga-inspired colouring books I've ever seen. The next store we popped into was a little bit of a detour from the colouring focused shopping, but it was just way too cute not to include in this video. This is Miniso, however you're supposed to say it. And while we do have a small one near where I live, this was the biggest Miniso that I've ever seen. Miniso is known for its Japanese inspired aesthetic, so it's right up my alley. They carry a mix of cosmetics, stationery, plushies, home accessories, and they're all kind of centered around creating that kind of treasure hunting shopping experience, which I definitely felt. They also frequently do collaborations with popular franchises like Marvel, Sanrio, and Disney. And as you can see, this store was absolutely packed with Stitch themed products. Loyal viewers will know that I'm going through a bit of a mild Stitch obsession at the moment after watching the live action film recently. So seeing all these adorable Stitch products in person was definitely making my heart very happy. Location number 5 on our agenda was finally an art supply store. Unfortunately, this was the only art store we managed to visit on the trip since the others weren't within walking distance. But this one is called Eckersley's. I always struggle to say that, but it's a pretty well-known art store chain here in Australia, and it's definitely the place to go to if you're after a wide variety of open stock items. They had Posca paint pens, Copics, Prismacolors, and a whole range of Faber-Castell and Derwent products available individually too. I also stumbled across a few colouring books and art books while I was there. I especially loved this cute little Manga Chibis drawing book. If it had been just a smidge cheaper, it would have ended up in my shopping basket. And I was so excited to see some of the Kuretake Gansai Tambi watercolor sets in person too. I honestly thought you could only get those online in Australia, so that was a pleasant surprise. And then the final stop on our little Melbourne colouring shopping extravaganza trip was none other than the classic Big W. And I was just curious to see how a Melbourne Big W compared to the ones that I usually shop at on the Gold Coast. So I will say they definitely had a lot more colouring books here than my local store, but the book section itself was so poorly organised. I think I ended up finding colouring books scattered across 5 different sections of the store, which I don't know, just felt a little bit over the top in my opinion. As per usual, the actual adult colouring section was pretty limited, but they did have plenty of the cozy, simple and bold style colouring books available. And I will say that I do really love how colouring has gained so much more popularity over the last couple of years, but I do hope that trend starts to trickle a little bit more into the, I guess, the more detailed and intricate colouring books too. Oh, I would just love to see more Rita Berman, Hannah Carlzon and Maria Troll books popping up on my bookshelves here in Australia and just, I guess, all over the world as well. And slightly off tangent, I also spotted this fun little home interior sticker book. I was so tempted to pick it up, but I knew it'd probably be one of those things I'd try once and then never touch again. So it was fun to look at, but didn't end up in the shopping cart at the end. So those were the 6 stores that Jackson and I ended up shopping and filming at in Melbourne. Archie is being a little bit of a menace today. Say hi everyone, I'm being a big old menace today. Okay, goodbye. Archie keeps doing this thing where he keeps biting my calves. I don't know why he keeps doing it. I give him food and he doesn't want it. I think he just wants attention. Hey, you want attention. That's why you're biting my calves all the time. But Archie cameo over and done with. Of course, we now have to head into the haul portion of this video. I didn't end up purchasing too much in Melbourne because I had a bit of a luggage weight limit that I had to adhere to. But I also have a bunch of other coloring goodies that I've received or picked up recently, so I'm going to share those with you too. But let's start with the Melbourne haul first. I ended up purchasing 2 cozy style coloring books. I've recently been dipping my toes into that genre a little bit. I've just been finding that those style of coloring pages are perfect when I'm on the verge of a coloring slump. The illustrations are a little bit simpler, quite relaxing, and just a nice way to shake things up from the more detailed pages I usually color. So first off is the coloring book that I fell in love with at Dimmicks. This is Cute and Cozy Christmas by Harry Alexander. And there's just something about these pages that immediately put a big old smile on my face. The illustrations actually feel a little more detailed than you'd usually find in the simple and bold coloring book genre, which is probably why I was so drawn to it. And as I always do in my coloring book hauls, I'm going to show you the top 3 pages that I'm most excited to color in each. So first off is this page here with the adorable kitties popping out of the Christmas present box. We all know I'm a big cat lover, so this was an immediate yes for me. I mean, I'm pretty sure these are cats. They've got cat-like features, so if they're not cats, they now are when I color them. And then the second page is this one here. I am absolutely obsessed with how the reindeers have been drawn in this book, and I think that was a major contributor to me adding this to my collection. I mean, just look at them. Aren't these the most adorable reindeers you've ever seen? And then the final top page I'm excited to color is this one here with the penguin inside the wreath. I feel like this would actually be a really good illustration to try the dopamine coloring trend on that Sarah Ned Clark has been promoting. I feel like it could turn out really fun if I take that approach. And then the second book I picked up is Cozy Japan by Jade Summer. Are we surprised? I mean, if you're surprised, you're probably new here. And I will say I have actually had my eyes on this book for a while. I kept toing and fro as to whether I actually wanted to add it to my collection because the line work is quite a bit thicker than I'm used to. But the more I flipped through it in the stores, every time I saw it, the more I convinced myself that I needed it. And one feature I do really like in this book is that it has like a coloring checklist at the beginning, so you can keep track of all the pages you've completed, which, yeah, I think that's awesome. I wish all coloring books had that. Now, it was very hard picking the top 3 from this book because, yeah, I could see myself coloring a majority of the pages. But first off, I decided to tab this Japanese wedding day illustration. If you didn't know, Jackson and I got married this year, and I really have been meaning to color a page that's somewhat wedding related to commemorate the occasion, and I still haven't gotten around to it yet, and it's been over 6 months. So I feel like this one could be a strong contender, especially since we are going to Japan next year for our belated honeymoon. And then I chose this page here as well for no other reason than how adorable the cows are. Look at these cows. They're just too freaking cute. And then the last one is this kitsune illustration. I'm going to pronounce so many things wrong in this video. I just really love the mythological aspect of this illustration, and I think there's something about the composition as well. I think it's the somewhat symmetrical nature of the illustration. Just, I find it really visually appealing. And now onto the coloring supplies I picked up. These few items have a little bit of a backstory behind them. So my favorite set of acrylic markers is this 48 set here from Ohuhu, and in particular, I love the white and sunshine yellow fine tipped markers in this set, but I have used those markers so much that they are on their last legs now, and I'm fairly sure, at least to my knowledge, is that Ohuhu doesn't do any sort of open stock for their acrylic markers. So I thought I would look at the Posca paint pen range and see if I could find anything within a similar vein to the fine tip markers in this set. So the first one I picked up is this white PC1M bullet shaped marker. This has a 0.7 millimeter tip, and I feel like this one is pretty identical to the white Ohuhu marker. So I'm hoping this will be a solid equivalent. And then I also got the ivory PC3M marker with a 0.9 to 1.3 millimeter bullet nib. It is a slightly lighter yellow and a touch thicker than the Ohuhu sunshine yellow marker, but I think I'll still end up really liking it. I'll keep you posted in future videos how I find these Posca paint pens in comparison to the Ohuhu ones, because the only Posca paint pen that I've tried in the past is the super fine tipped white Posca paint pen, and with that one I do usually have to do a couple of layers to get the opacity I prefer. So hopefully these slightly thicker nibs are a touch more opaque. And then the last supply I picked up in Melbourne, the backstory behind this one, if you saw my recent colouring vlog, you'll know that I wanted to try the pointillism technique but didn't have any fine liners on hand. So I improvised and used the Languo gel pens instead. And yeah, that turned out being a bit of a fail. So I thought it was about time I added some actual fine liners to my colouring toolkit. And I picked up the 25 cent of Stabilo 0.88 fine liners. I don't know if that's the correct name for them. These were actually recommended to me by a subscriber, and funnily enough, I did own some ages ago, but I ended up tossing them out in my move earlier this year because most of them had dried out. So while they're not completely new to me, I couldn't remember how they actually performed in their prime. And from my swatching, at least, I'm very happy to report that these seem to be great quality. They lay down really smooth, and the colors are so incredibly bright and saturated. So get ready for a little bit of a pointillism redemption arc in the future from me. Also, you can get larger sets than this one, but I don't know, I felt like the 25 set felt like a good place to start and had a pretty well-rounded color range. And now let's get into all the other coloring goodies that have managed to wiggle their way into my collection recently. So first off, we have Diane Dufour's new coloring book. This is Dragon de Monde. Really great French pronunciation there, Kira. I pre-ordered this book for myself when I was having a little bit of a not so stellar day, and I'm very glad I did. This one follows a similar premise to Diane's previous publication, Sirène du Monde, which features mermaids around the world, but this time we've got dragon illustrations from different regions and countries all around the globe. My top 3 favorites in this book are definitely very Kira coded. So first off is this adorable cat hugging a dragon. Are you kidding me? I would love a baby dragon as a pet, as long as it's not full-on fire breathing all the time. That would be a recipe for disaster. I then thought this illustration was really cool as well, and it's kind of giving me festive energy, just like a tiny bit of a festive vibe. I think it's something to do with the holly on the sled in the corner there. Maybe I could Christmasify this page for the December period. And then the third page I'm most excited to color is this one here. How could you not love this page? It's just a bunch of baby dragons eating cookies. Seriously, Diane Dufour, her imagination is absolutely sublime. And then I was sent this adorable book from the company itself. This is Festive Days by Coloured Caramel. I've mentioned their Instagram account a couple of times on the channel before because I find their alcohol marker tutorials so so incredibly helpful. But they actually illustrate their own coloring books as well. And what I really love about this company is that they are a small business. They are just made up of 3 individuals. They illustrate everything themselves. There's no AI whatsoever. And yeah, I really admire that. But as for my top 3 favorite pages, first up is this reindeer tangled up in Christmas lights. I must have something really going with reindeers this year. I'm just loving my reindeers. And I think this one would also be a great page to practice adding my own Christmas decorations to the trees in the background here. There's lots of space to experiment with that. So I'm liking the look of that one. We then have an adorable sledding scene illustration, and I actually tabbed this one because I've been meaning to try forever doing a firework effect in one of my coloring pages, and we've already got somewhat of a firework effect going on this page, so I think this might be the perfect opportunity to try that effect out. And then finally we have this one, another reindeer moment with them flying in the sky with Santa's sleigh. I really need to redeem myself when it comes to portraying some sort of glow effect with alcohol markers. This page might be the opportunity to redeem myself. I feel like I need to do some sort of redemption video in the future where I just redeem myself with all the coloring techniques I've failed in the past. And then somehow I was lucky enough to receive this big old Christmas care package from Ohuhu. This package was seriously filled to the brim with so many awesome crafty coloring related goodies. Inside was a tote bag, a desktop calendar, stickers, coasters, bulldog clips, this kind of special Christmas edition set of the Honolulu S markers, and even some festive coloring pages printed on paper specifically designed for acrylic markers. I've never heard of paper like that before, so I'll definitely have to try that out at some point soon. And then they also included some of their regular products in the box as well, so I thought I'd go through those with you in a little bit more detail and let you know my thoughts on them. First up, the Ohuhu colored dual tip fine liners. These are dual-ended markers, obviously, with a fine 0.4mm tip on one end and a brush nib on the other. And of course I received these after purchasing the other fine liners in Melbourne, but thankfully there aren't any color duplicates between the 2 sets. Hallelujah. The Ohuhu fine liners are definitely a little bit less saturated than the Stabilos. So if you prefer really bold, punchy color for your fine liners, these probably aren't going to be the ones for you. But if you are after something a little bit more softer and subtler, these will be perfect, I think. And they definitely round out my now little mini collection of fine liners perfectly. I was then so excited to see these in the care package. These are the 48 set of Nahuku acrylic markers. I did already own these, but I only had the 24 set, but now I have the 48 set. Yes! These are by far the most opaque acrylic brush markers that I've ever tried that don't require any sort of activation. They show up pretty decently on black paper, but on white paper, the opacity is seriously just top notch. And the great thing about this set is that they do include 3 black markers and 3 white markers, which is, yeah, great for me because I definitely use those colors the most. And then they included another set of acrylic markers. These are the Kalalau acrylic markers. This video is really testing my pronunciation of things, but these are also brush markers. We've got 30 colors in this set. And I did find from my swatching that these have a much more translucent formulation in comparison to the Nahuku markers. When I swatched them, I actually did 2 layers for each swatch, and they still weren't quite the same opacity as the Nahukus, so definitely not the most opaque markers out there. I will say though that these more translucent brush markers like these ones here do have a time and a place when it comes to coloring. I particularly love more translucent brush markers when I want to achieve a very soft glowing effect on my pages, or even some sort of translucent steam effect, or maybe you're trying to create a ghost effect in your page. Now this final product I'm going to share with you, I don't think you can actually purchase anymore, but I wanted to show them to you anyway because they're such a unique product that I've kind of never seen before. These are the very intriguing Ohuhu outline markers. They're basically dual layer glitter markers that have a very shimmery silver center surrounded by a colored edge. And I will say, oh my goodness, these are so incredibly shiny. The glitteriness of them even showed up on camera, which very rarely happens. I did test them out on black paper as well because, I don't know, I feel like the packaging kind of alludes to the fact that they're usable on black paper. But yeah, they're definitely not. I mean, you can use them, but you do not see the colored edge whatsoever. I'd just say that the silver glitter just slightly gets imbued with a slightly different color. However, seeing how sparkly these markers are, I am so curious to try out Ohuhu's purely glitter markers because yeah, if they're as shimmery as this, they are going to be a must-have for my coloring toolkit. And finally, I was so incredibly fortunate to receive the new updated versions of the first and second Sarah Renee Clark color cubes, as well as the brand new third and fourth volumes. These are now going to be a prized possession in my life. I won't go into too much detail about these because firstly, I'm sure 99% of you already know Sarah and these amazing products. And secondly, my next video is going to be a fully dedicated color cube challenge. I've come up with this very interesting challenge within my little noggin that requires a lot of pulling of color cube cards, a lot of coloring, and yeah, it's probably going to be a chaotic time, but hopefully a grand old time nonetheless. So a humongous thank you to Sarah for sending these my way. We all know I'm just a massive fan of her channel, of her products, and what she stands for. So yeah, I'm incredibly grateful to have these in my life. But there we have it, everyone. That was my Melbourne shopping adventure, as well as all the coloring goodies I've recently added to my collection. If you'd like to treat yourself to any of the products I've mentioned whilst also supporting the channel just a little bit, I do have an Ohuhu discount code, a color cube affiliate link, my Amazon storefront, all linked in the description below. And you'll also find the link to my Patreon if you want to support the channel even further and get extra content from me every month. And as a big old thank you for watching until the very end, here's an embarrassing montage of me opening the color cubes for the first time and completely fangirling in the process. Until next time, happy coloring, friends. Have a good day, have a good life, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye! The time has come. It is time to open this big behemoth of a package. Look at this! It is so heavy. I wonder how much this weighs. Oh, it literally says it weighs 6 kilograms. Holy moly. You do not know how excited I have been to unbox this package. It's literally been in my house for over a week now because I had to go to Melbourne and I really wanted to film the unboxing experience with you, but I didn't have time before I left, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, the time has come. The time is now. Let's open this package. Also, I'm obsessed with the fact that Sarah Renee Clark has her own packing materials. That is so extra and I'm absolutely in love with it. Oh my goodness. Oh, I am so happy right now. Oh my goodness, they're gorgeous. They are gorgeous. I can't get them out. I can't get them out. I have no words. I can't believe these are in my hands. I'm obsessed. I love it. They look gorgeous. Welcome to the family, my color cube babies.